Hi, welcome back. In today's video, we're going to have a class called text processor, and it is going to perform, there are functions in this class that they are going to perform text related operations. For example, let me illustrate it with an example here. So this is the class called text processor, and there are three functions in this class. In order to create a class, we're going to use the keyword class, then the name of the class, and then the column. We can change the name of the class to whatever we want. We can name it X, we can name it Y, H, whatever we want. But it's preferable to write down a number a name that makes sense so you can remember it easily. For example, when I see this name on my class, for example, text processor, I would say, okay, I understand somehow about the functions that are inside this class. So text processor, okay, I'm having some functions that are doing something related to text. So this is how I choose the name of my class. In the previous videos, for example, you saw that the name of the class was converter because inside of that class, I was having functions that they were converting between different units for me. So you can name this function to be X, but then you need to remember X means what. If you provide a name that means something, it would be nicer because when you're having a very long line code, for example, 2000 lines, and you're developing this code over 3 months, you may not remember why you named a class X and what the class X is having inside of it. So what are the functions doing inside of this class? So it's better to have a nice name for classes and also for functions. Here, inside this text processor class, we're having three functions. The first function is called count words. So when looking at this function name, we can see that, okay, this function name is count words. So this function probably is going to count the number of words that we are having. Or this function name is reverse text. So this function is probably trying to reverse for example, a string for us. And also here, the name of the function is to uppercase. So this function probably is going to uppercase the letters or strings or all the whole sentence, etc. So we can guess what this function is doing because this function now is short. But we may have in the future, when we are developing our code, we may have, for example, a function with 200 lines. So it's not easy every time that we want to see what this function does. We need to go through all the lines to understand, okay, this function was doing this. So it's nice to smartly choose the name of the functions. Also, you can put comments. For example, I can type down this function is counting the number of words in a sentence, for example. Okay. And this function is doing, for example, the reversing of a sentence, etc. So this way you can also remember, okay, this function is going to do this for us. So now this function is having one argument. The argument is a string here, we see. And then we are in this function, basically we are counting the number of words in a sentence. To do that, we are using the split function, and then we are calculating the number of words there. So this sentence is splitted into two parts using the split function. So a split function can understand that there are two words here because it detects the number of spaces in between. Then when it counts that, when it splits these sentence into two words, then we are going to calculate the number of words using the len function. Then we are going to return the output here. So in order to call the count word class, we are writing down the name of the class dot the name of the function, and in parentheses I just have one argument that is called hello world, for example. So this is my string when calling this function. Then this function is called. This hello world, let's say phrase, or let's say sentence, it's a small sentence, is splitted into two parts because there are two words here. And then we are, by len function, we are measuring the number of words and we are returning the output. And when the output is returned, we are basically having the output here. And because we are using the print function, we are going to print the output. So number 2 is printed out in the output. Then we are having the reverse text function. So this function basically is going to reverse a string. For example, we call this reverse text function with one argument called Python. And when we call this function, this text is passed as argument, and this text is being reversed using this formula. So colon -1, when we are having it, we are going to, Python is understanding, the compiler understands that we would like the text to be reversed. So this is how we can reverse a text in Python, for example. Then the reversed version of the text is returned, and we are having the return here, and then we are printing the returned output of the function here, which is this. Okay, so this Python is reversed. So you see NOHTYP. So we are reversing it from the end. So NOHTY and P. And finally, we are having another function called to uppercase. And basically, this function is going to uppercase all the letters in our string. So we call the to uppercase function, and we are having a string, and all of the string is in lowercase letters. So we're having hello, and we are going to use the upper function to make this string uppercase. So this hello is passed as argument. So the text, which is our string now, is written here dot upper function with empty parentheses, and it is going to uppercase all the letters in our string, and we are returning the output of this function. So the hello is now becoming like hello here, and we are returning it here, and the returned output is now inside these parentheses. And because we are using the print function, it is going to print hello for us in the output. So when I run this code, we see that the first result is number 2. So the number of words in this sentence is 2. This is why it is returning 2. So we learned how to calculate the number of words in a sentence as well using a function inside a class. Then also we reviewed how to reverse a string. Here we are reversing it, and also how to uppercase a string. Now that is shown here. So in this coding exercise, we had a class called text processor, and inside that class we were having relevant functions that each of them were doing certain tasks related to text operations. The first one, for example, is counting the number of words in a sentence. The second one is reversing a string, and the third one is going to uppercase a string that we are passing as argument when we call this function. So it was a good example to not only review the class concept, but also to review some of the, for example, string functions like the split, len, and how to reverse a string, for example, on how to uppercase. Thank you for watching.